안녕하세요. 와, 오늘 날씨 진짜 좋네요. 그죠?
네, 그러게요. 이런 날 딱 좋은 사람하고 수다 떨기 좋은 날씨죠.
맞아요. 그래서 말인데 최근에 끝난 비트코인 서울 2025 있잖아요?
아, 정말 대단했죠. 아, 내내 열기가 엄청났다고 들었어요.
혹시 아쉽게 참석 못하셨거나 그 현장의 열기를 다시 느끼고 싶은 분들 계실 것 같아요?
네, 그런 분들을 위해 저희가 좀 준비를 해봤습니다.
아, 그리고 시작하기 전에요. 그 라이언 님이 정리해 주신 컨퍼런스 리포트가 있거든요.
아, 네, 그거 퀄리티 좋더라고요.
그렇죠. 그거 먼저 읽어보시면 오늘 저희 얘기가 훨씬 뭐랄까 쏙쏙 들어오실 거예요. 진짜 추천합니다.
맞아요. 자, 그럼 그 중에서도 저희가 좀 인상 깊게 봤던 세션 얘기를 해볼까요?
네, 그 국경 없는 비트코인, 글로벌 커뮤니티가 만들어가는 채택의 물결 세션이요?
네, 바로 그거요. 이게 단순 기술 얘기가 아니라 비트코인이 어떻게 전 세계 커뮤니티를 통해서 퍼져나가는지 그 생생한 모습을 볼 수 있어서 좋았어요.
문화적인 현상 같기도 하고요.
맞아요. 진짜 전 세계 비트코인 덕후들이 모인 느낌.
서울, 시드니, 홍콩, 발리. 와, 이렇게 다양한 지역 리더들이 자기 경험을 얘기하는데
패널들도 화려했죠. 모더레이터가 유트렉소 개발자 켈빈이 없고
네, 그리고 시드니의 JP, 홍콩의 아서라이, 노아 실버만, 또 발리의 교육자 키플렉까지. 이분들 배경이 정말 다 다르잖아요.
네, 맞아요. 각자 어떻게 비트코인에 빠지게 됐는지 얘기하는 것부터가 흥미로웠어요.
그렇죠. 켈빈은 기술 질문 답변해주다가 시작했고
JP는 그 초기 미덥들이 막 알트코인 얘기로 흐려지는 거 보고 아, 안 되겠다. 비트코인만 파는 커뮤니티를 만들어야겠다. 뭐 이렇게 결심했다고 하더라고요.
아, 그런 계기가 있었군요.
네, 그리고 아서는 2013년 마운트국스 사태 때 와, 비트코인 끝났다 이렇게 생각했는데
아, 그때 진짜 다들 그랬을 텐데.
네, 근데 홍콩 커뮤니티 만나고 생각이 확 바뀌었다고 하고요. 이런 시작점들이 다 다르다는 게 재밌어요.
노아 얘기는 진짜 좀 웃겼어요. 2011년에 공원에서 현금 주고 비트코인을 샀다니.
아, 진짜요? 와, 그건 정말 거의 전설 속의 이야기 아닌가요?
네, 상상도 안 가죠. 그리고 키프랩은 발리에서 웹3, 뭐 크립토 이런 얘기가 엄청 많은데 오히려 딱 비트코인 중심 커뮤니티랑 교육, 그 코드 오렌지였죠. 거기에 집중하게 된 이유를 설명했고요.
맞아요. 그러면서 우리가 비트코인의 레이어 제로다 이 말이 딱 와닿더라고요.
네, 저도 그 말. 커뮤니티가 정말 기본 중에 기본이라는 거죠.
그렇죠. 기술 이전에 사람이 있다는 거. 그래서 커뮤니티 운영 원칙 얘기도 중요했어요. 특히 그 알트코인 뉴욕 속에서 어떻게 비트코인 중심을 지키냐. 이게 다들 고민이더라고요.
맞아요. 쉽지 않죠.
JP가 알트코인 프로젝트를 비유한 거 기억나세요? 넓이는 1마일인데 깊이는 1인치라고.
와, 네. 그거 정말 뼈 때리는 비유였어요.
그렇죠. 단순히 뭐랄까 피상적이다 이런 비판을 넘어서 기술 철학이나 커뮤니티의 지속 가능성 문제랑 연결되는 통찰이었어요. 깊이가 없으면 오래 못 가니까요.
노아가 가격 말고 기술 자체, 그러니까 허가 없이 돌아가는 분산 시스템에 집중해야 한다고 한 것도 비슷한 맥락이겠죠.
네, 정확해요. 그리고 키플랩이 했던 말 중에 좀 현실적인 조언도 있었잖아요. 때로는 실패를 해봐야 그 get wrecked라고 표현했죠.
네, get wrecked.
그래야 진짜 맥시멀리스트가 된다. 아, 이거 정말.
저도 초기에 못 모르고 막 투자했다가 된통당한 기억이 있어서 하하, 완전 공감했어요. 실패하면서 배우는 거죠.
그렇죠. 지역별 상황 다른 것도 재밌었어요. 한국은 라이트닝 결제 가맹점이 벌써 100곳 넘게 생겼다면서요. 풀풀이 방식으로.
네, 자발적으로요. 근데 홍콩은 미터 벽사는 긴데 의외로 상점 채택은 좀 더디다고 하고
발리는 또 법적인 제약이 있는데도 커뮤니티는 활발하고 환경은 다 다른데 그 핵심 활동은 계속 이어진다는 게 중요해 보여요.
여기서 JP 관점이 좀 신선했어요. 상점 채택이 비트코인 성공의 결과이지 뭐랄까 꼭 필요한 조건은 아니다.
아, 네. 장기적으로 보면 가치가 오르면 상점들이 알아서 비트코인을 원하게 될 거다. 이런 시각이죠?
네, 굉장히 비트코인 다운 장기적인 관점이었어요.
그렇죠. 근데 또 한편으로는 그 과정에서 사용자 경험이나 인프라 구축 없이 정말 자연스럽게 될까 하는 고민도 좀 느껴지긴 했어요. 가치 상승이랑 실사용성 사이의 균형, 이게 계속 숙제인 것 같아요.
아, 그것도 일리 있네요. 마지막으로 각 도시 커뮤니티랑 어떻게 연결될 수 있는지 그 구체적인 정보들 알려준 것도 좋았어요.
맞아요. 시드니는 비트코인 시드니, 홍콩은 비트코인 홍콩 미트업, 발리는 비트코인 하우스 발리.
네. 여행 갈 때 이런 데 찾아가 보면 진짜 재밌을 것 같아요. 현지 비트코이너들 만나고.
그럼요. 이런 글로벌 네트워크가 비트코인의 또 다른 힘이죠. 그냥 디지털 코드 쪼가리가 아니라 진짜 만나고 교류하는 사람들이 있다는 거.
저는 이 세션 들으면서 느낀 게, 전 세계 진짜 다양한 곳에서 비슷한 생각을 가진 사람들이 자발적으로 모여서 뭔가를 만들어가는 그 에너지 있잖아요. 그게 정말 인상 깊었어요. 단순히 돈 벌려고 하는 걸 넘어서는 어떤 가치가 있구나 하는 걸 다시 느꼈어요.
저도 비슷해요. 환경은 다르고 어려움도 있겠지만 비트코인이라는 하나의 공통부모 아래서 다들 장기적인 비전을 보고 꾸준히 활동하는 모습이요. 단기적인 유행 따라가기보다 본질에 집중하는 그 뚝심. 그게 비트코인의 진짜 힘이 아닐까? 그런 생각을 했습니다. 자, 오늘 저희가 이렇게 쭉 살펴봤는데요. 이 이야기들을 들으시면서 여러분은 어떤 생각이 드셨나요? 다양한 지역 커뮤니티의 이야기 속에서 앞으로 비트코인이 더 의미 있게 확산되려면 어떤 형태의 레이어 제로, 그러니까 어떤 커뮤니티가 가장 중요할지 한 번쯤 생각해 보시면 어떨까 싶습니다.
Welcome, everyone. Ready for a special deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating session from Bitcoin Seoul 2025.
Yeah, this is for all of you who maybe couldn't make it to the conference this time around.
Right, or maybe you were there and just want to revisit some of those key discussions, kind of get a refresher.
Consider this your direct line to the core takeaways.
Exactly. Our mission today is to really dig into one specific panel. It was titled Borderless Bitcoin, a wave of adoption created by the global community.
And it was a fantastic look at how Bitcoin is, crossing cultures and borders. We're talking real-world uses, different government approaches, and maybe most importantly,
The grassroots stuff.
the grassroots stuff. Yeah, the power of these global communities driving things forward.
Absolutely. We've sifted through a ton of insights from some, frankly, incredible speakers on that panel. We're aiming to pull out the biggest nuggets of knowledge, maybe some surprising facts, too.
So the big question is, what does this all mean for you? How does it maybe shape your view on Bitcoin's future?
Let's get right into it. Okay, let's set the stage first. The panel itself. We had Calvin moderating. He's the lead developer for U3XO, which is a pretty cutting-edge Bitcoin scaling project.
Yeah, very sharp guy. And he was joined by JP, who's deeply involved in global Bitcoin community education.
Then Arthur Lai from the Hong Kong Bitcoin Association, focusing on financial infrastructure.
And also from HKBA, Noah Silverman. He's been building decentralized communities, particularly down in South America.
Right, and rounding it out was Key Pleb. He's the founder of Code Orange Developer School.
Which is really cool. It's specifically teaching young people practical Bitcoin skills. Things like running your own node, advanced self-custody, really important stuff.
It really is. And what immediately jumps out looking at that lineup is just how different their paths into Bitcoin were.
Totally. It's not one single story. Each person found their way in differently. Take Calvin, the moderator. He actually started his journey right there in Seoul back in 2017. Yeah, just going to local meetups. And he really stressed how important those face-to-face meetings were for him.
For digging deeper.
Exactly. For asking the complex technical economic questions that you just can't get answered as well online sometimes. He said that community was where he truly learned what Bitcoin was all about.
And he's still running those meetups now, right? He mentioned something pretty unique about Korea, the grassroots adoption.
Yeah. Over 100 stores there now directly accepting Lightning payments.
Wow. For anyone maybe less familiar, Lightning means super fast, super cheap Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah.
Makes buying a coffee actually practical.
Right, it's off the main chain. And Calvin highlighted this as a very tangible, community-led adoption wave in Korea, very bottom-up.
That really feeds into the whole community theme. JP's story, it also really paints a picture of why these dedicated spaces matter.
It really does. He described himself as a Bitcoiner since late 2013, got really involved around 2014. But the key part of his story, I think, was in 2018.
What happened then?
Well, he and Stefan Livera, another well-known Bitcoiner, they decided to start a completely fresh Bitcoin-only community in Sydney.
Ah, okay. Why Bitcoin only?
Because their previous experiences with meetups that covered, all kinds of crypto, they just got distracted, as he put it.
Right, the altcoin noise. I remember him saying that. Diluted the focus.
Exactly. He felt it weakened the group. So this new group was strictly Bitcoin.
You could really feel his conviction there about the long-term value of that focus. He even mentioned their Bush Bashers events.
Yeah. Annual events across Australia. He said they build real friendships, real business connections. It really speaks to, sticking to your principles, even if you start smaller.
Definitely. Arthur Lai's journey felt maybe a bit more relatable to folks who remember the early kind of Wild West days.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. He got started around 2013, 2014, right in the thick of the Silk Road and Mt. Gox era.
Yeah, not exactly the most confidence-inspiring time for Bitcoin.
Not at all. He admitted he actually thought Bitcoin was basically dead at one point.
Wow. So what brought him back?
He connected with the Hong Kong Bitcoin Association, the HKBA, and get this, it's apparently one of the world's oldest public Bitcoin meetups. Been going for over 13 years.
That's incredible longevity. And his focus now is interesting too, orange-pilling pub owners.
Yeah, that's the term, right? Trying to get them to accept Bitcoin, but more than that, to understand it beyond just another payment option.
Because they weren't really getting the deeper value.
Seems like it. He mentioned many would try accepting it, but then stop, especially if they didn't grasp the bigger picture. So now he's shifting focus, trying to find more open spaces for actually using Bitcoin practically, like buying a beer with Lightning.
It's like constant education challenge, isn't it?
Always. Now, Noah Silverman, also with the HKBA, his path was a bit different again, started in academia.
Right, grad school in 2011.
Yeah, and his first Bitcoin buy sounded, well, let's just say it sounded very 211, buying it for cash in a park.
It's a bit sketchy.
A bit. He used the data for research initially, but it was moving to Hong Kong where he really found the community aspect. He valued that it was more than just finance.
That human connection again.
Exactly. Which leads us to Kipleb, the last panelist. He landed in Bali in late 2022 looking for community.
And found.
Mostly Web3, crypto, blockchain nonsense, in his words. Not the Bitcoin focus he wanted.
So what did he do? He started his own thing, right?
He did. Started monthly Bitcoin-only meetups, and that snowballed into the Indonesia Bitcoin Conference.
Wow, that's impact.
Huge impact. He co-founded Bitcoin House Bali, very focused on defending the network, being strictly Bitcoin-only. He embraced that term, toxic for fun.
Ah, yes, the maximalist stance, but with a bit of irony.
Kind of, yeah. Taking a firm line against distractions, but aiming to be inclusive in strengthening the core Bitcoin community. So hearing all these different stories, these different paths, it really brings up a core question, doesn't it? What actually makes a Bitcoin community strong? How do they stay resilient, against market swings, against all the noise from other crypto projects?
That's a great question. And JP's experience, like we touched on, seems central to that, the need for focus.
Mm-hmm. Those mixed meetups just lost their way, he felt.
Leading to the deliberate Bitcoin-only space. And that analogy he used was brilliant, I thought. Bitcoin is a mile deep, an inch wide.
Right, compared to other crypto being a mile wide, an inch deep.
It's not just catchy, it really gets at something fundamental, doesn't it? About where the real substance is. For you listening, that mile deep, inch wide idea, it's a really useful way to think about what builds lasting value here. Depth over superficial breadth.
It really is. And Kipleb hit on this, too, from a different angle. He stressed education.
To avoid the scams, the distractions.
Yeah. He talked about his own experience getting wrecked, losing money on altcoins early on.
Ouch.
Big ouch. But he said it taught him to be a maxi, a Bitcoin maximalist, basically deciding Bitcoin was the only game in town worth focusing on.
And his Code Orange school reflects that.
Totally. It's all about practical skills, running nodes, self-custody, building real knowledge, real resilience, not just hype.
Noah had a great line, too, about Bitcoin being boring.
Chuckles. Yeah, he did. No cartoon monkeys, no F1 sponsorships.
But that's its strength, he argued. That's stability. The focus should be on the tech, on growing this permissionless system.
Not just chasing the price, separating the signal from the noise, as you said.
Mm-hmm. Do they talk about how communities sort of filter members to keep that focus?
They did touch on that. Arthur mentioned the HKBA had actually considered a small membership fee, payable in Satoshi's tiny fractions of a Bitcoin.
As a way to show commitment, like skin in the game.
Exactly, just to ensure people were serious. And JP clarified their Sydney group doesn't actively filter like that, but they are very clear upfront. Promoting altcoins is just not welcome.
Setting clear boundaries.
Right. Maintaining the focus, the integrity. It's a tricky balance, isn't it? How do you stay open but also stick firmly to your mission?
Okay, so we've seen these diverse paths into Bitcoin and the power people find in these focused communities. But how does this translate into actual adoption And what does adoption even mean in this context? This, for me, is where the discussion got really interesting.
Oh, definitely. Because the examples they gave showed such different pictures.
Like Korea.
Yeah, Calvin's example.
Mm-hmm.
Over 100 stores using Lightning. That feels like classic merchant adoption, but with a strong self-custody focus, which is key, people controlling their own keys.
But then you contrast that with Indonesia, where Key Pleb said Bitcoin payments are technically illegal.
Right. So adoption there looks different. It's more about helping individuals set up wallets, one person at a time. Merchant stuff happens, but it has to be in these sort of closed-loop systems to get around the regulations.
Shows the community finding ways, but also highlights the friction.
Totally. And then Hong Kong presents yet another picture.
Slower merchant adoption there.
Much slower, according to Noah and Arthur. Most people are just hodling.
Just holding on for the long term.
Exactly. Few merchants accept it, and apparently those who do often don't stick with it, especially through hard times like the pandemic. They felt it was partly a conservative government stance, but also just a lack of deeper public understanding. People might know Bitcoin exists.
But they don't grasp the why.
Precisely. Which brings us beautifully to JP's argument, which was, well, pretty provocative.
Yeah, he basically flipped the script on adoption, didn't he? He argued that Bitcoin's success isn't actually dependent on merchants accepting it.
Not at all. He compared it to gold, saying its primary function, at least for now, is absorbing economic potential energy, like a store of value.
And his point was that eventually the world will demand to pay in Bitcoin, not the other way around.
That's it. He even suggested that actively pushing merchants to accept Bitcoin might actually devalue it in people's eyes.
Because if it's truly valuable, you wouldn't be so eager to spend it. Is that the idea?
Kind of, yeah. That true value means people want to acquire it, to hold it. Merchant adoption, in his view, becomes a consequence of Bitcoin proving itself as a superior monetary asset, not the cause of its success.
That really turns the common narrative on its head.
It absolutely does.
Great.
And Arthur added a crucial layer to that. He said merchants need to understand that true value, the why. Otherwise, they'll just dip in and out. They won't see it as more than just another payment network.
So, understanding this distinction is maybe critical for your long-term view listening to this. This session really forces you to reconsider what adoption even looks like. Maybe it's less about buying coffee today.
And more about becoming this bedrock asset first, absorbing that global economic energy, like JP said.
Exactly. It makes you ask, okay, how do you define Bitcoin success? Is it the coffee shop metric? Or is it becoming this unshakable global monetary standard?
Yeah.
It really makes you think. Okay, so let's shift from the deep philosophical debates to something very practical, actually connecting with these communities around the world.
Yeah, the panelists really hammered home that build locally, connect globally idea. Find your local group, but also tap into the network when you travel.
Right, so for listeners interested, where can they connect if they're in or heading to Seoul?
Calvin mentioned meetup.com/Seoul Bitcoin. And apparently there's activity in Busan, too. Strong local presence there.
And Sydney. JP gave quite a list.
Oh, yeah. Sydney sounds incredibly active. They've got big monthly meetups, like 50 people with speakers. Also bi-weekly casual meetups, the big annual Bitcoin Alive conference.
And those Bush Basher events.
And the Bush Bashers, 4 times a year across Australia. JP said March is often a good time to visit around Bitcoin Alive. All the info, by the way, we'll link in the show notes at thedeepdive.com for all these locations.
Good point. What about Hong Kong?
Arthur and Noah said they have monthly public meetups. Second Thursday, 7 p.m. at the IFC Rooftop Garden. Sounds nice.
Definitely. You can find them on Meetup or Luma. Just search Bitcoin Hong Kong. They suggested November might be a peak time with trade fairs happening.
But any second Thursday works for the meetup itself.
And finally, Bali. Key Pleb's turf.
Bitcoin House Bali is the main hub there. Monthly meetups in Ubud. They've done stuff in Uluwatu too. And he specifically mentioned September 5th, they're hosting Bitcoin Week and Code Orange workshops then.
Ambitious goals too, aiming for 10 Bitcoin houses globally next year.
Very ambitious. So yeah, if Bali's on your radar, early September sounds like the time.
It really paints a picture of this vibrant living network, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows that Bitcoin isn't just code. It's not just online. It's deeply rooted in these physical human connections, these meetups, these houses. They provide the crucial support, education, that shared sense of purpose. It's truly global, but built locally.
Wow. Okay, that was quite the deep dive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We went from these really personal stories of how people found Bitcoin all the way to these big, complex debates about what adoption even means.
Yeah, the resilience, the passion, It really comes through when you hear directly from the people building these communities on the ground.
For me, I think the biggest takeaway was just how much it hammered home that Bitcoin isn't just about the tech or the price. It's fundamentally about the people. These grassroots efforts, people sharing knowledge, that commitment to the long game. That's the ecosystem's real power, I think. It really makes me feel how vital it is to stay connected to the builders, the users. Those connections are the fuel.
And for me, what really sticks is that whole nuanced discussion around adoption. It just cuts through the simple narrative that Bitcoin needs every shop to take it right now.
Right. It challenges that completely.
Yeah, the idea that its core value, its stability, might actually be the thing that pulls the world towards it over time. JP's point about pushing merchants, maybe even devaluing it, because valuable things aren't easy to part with. That's a profound thought.
It makes you wonder, are we just seeing phase one, Bitcoin as digital gold?
Before it becomes that global payment standard? Maybe. It's a reminder that sometimes the boring path, the stable path, is actually the most revolutionary one.
So, thinking about all this, after hearing these diverse, sometimes counterintuitive views, how do you listening define Bitcoin's success? Is it really about the number of coffee shops? Or is it about that unwavering stability as a potential global monetary asset?
And maybe, what role can you play in whatever that next wave of adoption looks like? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.